reason why I'm not super high on Bryce Young is just because of how good CJ Stroud has been. I was a believer in CJ Stroud coming out of the draft. I said that the Panthers should take CJ Stroud over Bryce Young going into the draft, even though they were leaning towards Bryce Young. And then all of the questions about CJ Stroud, people basically calling him dumb. We saw the preseason game where his first pass was an interception, and then everyone sunk down. We're like, oh God, here we go again for the Houston Texans. First game, they're like, okay. I was like, there's something there. He seems like he has a pretty good feel for the game versus the Ravens. And then they get blown out versus the Colts, but then he starts putting some good drives together. I'm like, okay, it looks like he figured it out the end of the game. We'll see if that's just junk yards. And then absolutely destroys the Jaguars, is throwing to Tank Dell, John Mechie, some of these no-name guys. We have Bobby Tree, Dalton Scholes. We have Brevin at tight end, and we're throwing to kind of these like C plus to B minus guys, and we're like, okay. And then all of a sudden, he has the most yards of any other quarterback at this point of his career than Cam Newton. He is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in football. His timing and the way he sees the field is way beyond his years. And then I was watching TJ Hushmanzada talk about him, and he's someone who's trained with him all the way back to high school, and he said he was more accurate than some NFL quarterbacks in high school. He's always been one of the most accurate quarterbacks, and he said not only that, his personality is someone who, no matter who you are, he'll leave you feeling better. He's a very uplifting guy, and he's a leader on this team, and he's someone who can turn around the culture of a franchise. And we're seeing DeMeco Ryans come in there and whip out his dick on draft night in front of everybody. He's like, you like that? I like that. I want Will Anderson and CJ Stroud because I am greedy. I want it all. And we have DeMeco Ryans coming in there, making everyone known who the new kid on the block is. And then CJ Stroud, I'm going to be one of the most accurate quarterbacks, and I'm going to be better than Joe Burrow so far this year. I'm going to be better than Dak Prescott so far this year. I'm going to be better than Trevor so far this year. I'm going to be better than Justin Herbert so far this year. I'm going to have better numbers to this point than Patrick Mahomes so far this year. CJ Stroud is letting everybody know, he's like, I have a bad offensive line. I don't have any help at wide receiver, but guess what? I'm going out there and I'm getting it done. This is something I haven't seen a player do with this like amount of deficit of talent than everyone else, because his weapons are comparable to Bryce Young. It comes down to having the it factor, the accuracy, the feel for the game, and just the leadership to turn around a culture. And he's making those weapons like, oh, well, I mean, Tank Dell. I mean, they still have Robert Woods, Dalton Schultz, and then Damian Pierce is ripping off runs. All of a sudden, Devin Singletary actually looks like a good player. And then you're seeing the excitement on the sideline when Will Anderson gets that scoop and score. And then the defense just goes out there and then punches a struggling offense in the mouth and knocks Kenny Pickett out of the game. So it's like, oh my God. The Texans are the Lions. The Lions they're better than the Lions were last year. They're kind of where the Philadelphia Eagles were their first year with Nick Sirianni. I was like, I want to believe in the Texans this year. The AFC is so loaded, but so far they played well. And
they played very well. Yeah, and I mean, for me, what stood out for me is you mentioned CJ Stroud. I like what I've seen from Tank Dell. He seems like their deep threat option to this point. And then, Damian Pierce running down people's throats. He's been really nice for them. Will Anderson. I was saying to them, you should probably take Will Anderson.
Yeah.
I think he'll be a nice fit, especially with DeMeco Ryans. We saw what DeMeco Ryans did for that 49ers defense in San Francisco. And I mean, talking about the big nuts on draft night, going out there and getting his guy, their defense has been really good to this point. And they faced some pretty decent offenses as well. But go out there against the Steelers, punch them in the mouth, hold them to 6 points. I know that the Steelers offense is not super great. So, I want to see them perform against another team like the Jaguars when they face them again, or when they face the Bills or the Dolphins. But great start. This is a team that won 3 games last year, and now they already have 2. this is a team that could definitely compete for that wild card spot.
Yeah.
Especially when we see a team like the Bengals struggling. You see a team that we thought could potentially be in the mix in the Steelers. They lost Kenny Pickett. The Patriots, they're pretty much out of the mix. All of the AFC West teams are a disaster. The Chargers, we don't know what the Chargers are going to be. The Broncos are a mess. The Raiders are a mess. You got on every team. It's like, okay, well, I know it's early in the season, but the Texans, the Colts, these two teams, like, they could steal a playoff spot from somebody. Absolutely. It's not that crazy.
Yeah, and this is their first home win since 2021. Like, this is electric stuff there. And then CJ Stroud being fourth in passing with no interceptions as a rookie after his first pass in preseason was an interception. And then the Steelers defense has been dominating people, kicking ass all year long. TJ Watt didn't have a sack in this game. Highsmith, I mean, he made some plays, but we didn't hear Minkah Fitzpatrick's name called in this game at all. We didn't hear Patrick Peterson's name get called at all. And then Dameon Pierce ripping off runs, and then someone like Nico Collins coming out of nowhere and it's like, oh, hey, I'm here. I'm a pretty good player. And then this team is just one of those teams you watch and you're like, I want to root for them. You see those red helmets, you see the people dressed up in the crowd. Like, Houston's uniforms are probably some of the coolest in the NFL. The fact that they have someone like CJ Stroud, who's so easy to root for, definitely looks like the best quarterback so far in his draft. And he looks like one of the better quarterbacks drafted in a while, because he's coming in there, turning heads, and he's like, okay, I want to be the guy that goes out there and gets it done. And I would want to see the last game of the year be like a matchup, like a play-in tournament game versus the Texans and the Chargers, and let's see what happens.